All right, we're live. This is Rona, and I've got Langley Shazor here with me. How,
Hello,
how are you doing today, Langley?
I am well. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good. A little tired, but I'm doing good. Can't complain.
Well, thank you for having me again. No, we planned for last week. My week was really busy last week, so I'm thankful to have some time to sit down and catch up with you.
Yeah, me too. Mine was too. I've had a lot of doctor's appointments and stuff getting ready for my weight loss surgery whenever. I got to do a bunch of stuff, but yeah, mine was busy too, honey. So this is just fine.
Yeah,
We'll,
well, and we have to be mindful that I think I talked about this a couple videos ago. There's time to be productive, and productive doesn't always mean being exhausted, but sometimes you do have to work diligently, and you have to work hard, and you have to really, put your best foot forward. And sometimes that does require long days and long evenings as well.
That's true. That's true. Lord. Yeah, it's been busy here. How are things down the Virgin Islands?
They're good. We've had a lot of rain lately, so we're predicting an early hurricane season,
Oh
which
dear.
doesn't sound quite the way it comes off. What that means is that we'll see a shift in our weather patterns, very similar to what we're seeing now. So we're seeing a lot more rain. We're seeing sustained rains as opposed to pop-up showers that we're used to, and we're seeing a little bit cooler temperatures in the atmosphere because the water's warming up and those things are happening. So I think what we're just going to see is an earlier onset of storms. We're seeing more thunderstorms this year, and I don't know that it's going to translate to actual hurricanes or even tropical storms of any kind of magnitude, but we are seeing that shift earlier on this year than in previous years.
Well, bless your heart. Y'all stay safe. Is the Galleon House, is it up high?
It's pretty high up. It's on what's called Government Hill, and so it sits not as high, of course, as some other places, but it's pretty far up. Um,
Yeah.
and I think that would be good. The rescue headquarters here is in an older building that's been here, I guess, since the dawn of time, as I've been informed. So this building here is very secure and very safe as well.
Well, good. Good. Well, what have you been into lately?
Uh, Everything,
Mm.
everything. It's been good. We've been talking about opportunities and knowing when opportunities are coming and knowing when to walk through a door, maybe when to keep a door shut. And I've had some experiences lately where God kind of showed a glimpse and he showed the opportunity, but it didn't come all the way to fruition. So what I've been dealing with a lot lately has been managing my expectations as well as my disappointment. Um, we oftentimes, because of expectation, we become disappointed, right? So that's the main driver of disappointment. And discontent is expectation. And I don't know that I completely subscribe to having no expectations, because I feel like the word says that we should expect God to move. I think what happens is we get into a place where we want him to move the way we want him to move or the time frame. And so it in that part of our expectation is where we find ourselves to be disappointed or discouraged because it didn't happen when I thought it should happen. It didn't happen the way I thought it should happen. It didn't come about through the people I thought it would. And I think that's where we have to be mindful about how to set expectations, uh, and saying that it's okay to expect God to move, just don't box him in how he decides to do it.
You're
And that's
right.
a balance.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh no, I just think it's a hard balance to figure out how to have expectation and not put your human conditioned mind on top of it.
Yeah, I've been experiencing that with my business, I've been asking God to anoint my business because, and all that's the only way I'm going to be successful in anything. And of course, with my health and everything, I ask Him to anoint that as well. And I've had little. I'm never disappointed in God. Of course, I know you're not either, but my expectations, like last month. I added 9 people to my team on my business, and this month I can't. I'm just having so much trouble getting anybody to commit, and I even got a real nasty email from somebody because they sign up these forms online if they're interested, and then I follow up. And I keep following it up till I get a no. That's
Mhm.
just the procedure. And Lord, I got a terrible nice email. Of course, that don't phase me is what they don't understand because I worked 25 years at the police department, so I've heard it all. But
Yeah, I'm sure.
yeah,
Uh,
but I understand, honey. But things will turn around for both of us.
Absolutely, and I talked about that today. The video I did this morning, I broke down the word believe, and I'll kind of go back over that a little bit.
Yes,
And
please.
what God showed me this morning, I had that word in my spirit, and the way He broke it down in my spirit was into two separate words. So you have to change the spelling for that latter part, but when you look at it as be, you are allowing God to be God in that situation or in your life or in that relationship. And the leave part, if you spelled it as in to walk away or to remit, you are leaving all the anxiety and the anticipation at the foot of the cross, or you're leaving it up to God to move. So when we look at the word believe, which the Webster is defined as to have the trust in knowing of something thing's going to happen, I'm being confident in that, what you're doing when you believe is exercising your faith because you are allowing God to be God and you're leaving it up to Him to be able to move in your situation in a way that He sees fit. And I also talked about how that can translate into a practical sense, because sometimes when you're with the wrong people, we talk
Hmm.
about how our new circle cannot exist, or our old circle cannot exist in our new circle, meaning that as you transition into new uh, appointments, and you transition into a new circle of or sphere of influence, and you transition into a new walk in life, the people of old, the things of old have no place in that area. So sometimes in a practical sense, when you believe that God's going to take you to a new level, what you have to do is leave those people, let them be who they are, and leave them where they are, i.e., in the past. Sometimes you can't carry people into your new season. And so
That's
sometimes when
true.
you're believing God for that new season, part of that, when we break it back down, is to say, I've got to let you be you and leave you where you are because I have to go in a different direction.
That's true, honey. That happened to me. When I back 6 years ago when I had to leave the police department because I had my nervous breakdown, and people that I thought were my friends. This is a different connotation on what you're talking about, but people I thought were my friends just dropped me like a hot potato when I, became very ill. Because with the nervous breakdown came a lot of health issues, and I'm
Mhm.
thankful. It's been a struggle, and I'm thankful to God, and my mom, you know, and to be where I am now, to even think about this business, I'm partaking in. But they kind of took that decision out of my hands. They just left me.
Well, and I pray a prayer that God answers pretty frequently and fairly immediately, and that is that, if God, if this person is not for me or not for this time, go ahead and remove them. And every time I've ever asked Him to do that, it's happened, or I've been shown that no, this person is for your season at this time. But something that just kind of hit my spirit while we were just talking, in terms of your situation, there are two things that reveal a person's true nature, and that is elevation and devastation. And when which one you experience, you're going to see how people are. You're going to see who they really are, because obviously, people who, when you elevate, and people can no longer use you,
Yeah,
or you can no longer be of service to them because of the direction you're going. You start to see how they actually are towards you and how they truly feel. And the same holds true with devastation. When you
yeah,
can't do anything for them, when you can't be there to help them out, when you can't be there to give them money, when you can't be there to take them somewhere, then all of a sudden you are of no use to them, and they walk away. So that's just something that is the nature of humanity. I mean, it's unfortunate, but I think that's something that we need to be aware of. Is that, this is why both of those situations, though at the opposite ends of the spectrum, are equally important and powerful, because it'll be in those times of elevation or devastation when God's going to reveal the people who are supposed to be in your walk, and walking with you in those moments.
Yeah, well, I believe that, honey, because it was really devastating. And the people that left me, I did everything for people there at work. I thought of them as my family, but I found out they're not. It
Well,
really, really hurt.
and that's the enemy. And not to disparage your emotional state at that time, because I know how that happens. When you're heartbroken like that. But
Yeah.
the enemy also works that way, and that's one thing that we have to remember is he knows us just as well as God knows us, and so you have to be mindful when you see certain things that a lot of things are going to be the enemy and not the people. And what I mean is, he's going to use family, he's going to use friends, he's going to use your finances. So it's always the things that are close to us is the first area of attack, because the battlefield is the mind, right? So what ends up happening is, if he can distract your mind, whether it be by your financial situation, your health situation, your family situation, your marriage, or your relationship, all these things, it may not have a physical manifestation in terms of abuse or some of those things, but it becomes such a focal point in your mind that you can no longer focus on your path. And so that's how the enemy works in a lot of ways, to not only keep us distracted, but keep us off course.
I believe that, honey. It was a struggle for a long time, and you can tell it still affects me
But
now.
in this long term, I talked about that just the other day as well. The Lord's really been giving me some powerful encouragement, and it's definitely translating to the videos. But it's also translating to things that I'm dealing with. So I don't sit. This is my normal analogy, but I'm not in some ivory tower trying to tell people how to live. I'm living
No,
as
Lord,
like you
no.
are, and
Mm-mm.
I've been encouraged as much as I've encouraged others. And it's always interesting to see how God takes a situation, even when it's devastating. Even, I can remember when I was going through the worst depressive state of my adult life, not long after, my divorce and all that kind of started to really take a nasty turn. Um, and I think so often on how horrible I felt, and how terrible it was, and how just disgusted I was with life, and just a lot of different emotions. But then I
Mm-hmm.
think back on where I am today, and I look at that situation, and I say this often, that I wish it on no one, and I would never want to go through that again.
No,
However, I am thankful, because had it not been for that, uh, my trajectory may not be in the direction that it is currently. Um,
amen.
and
Yeah, I
even with
agree.
that, may have taken longer for me to get here. So I thank God for that, because that was a shift that had to happen to get my attention and to get me going in the direction He wanted me to go, faster than I was moving.
Right. Well, when I look back on it now, I know it was a blessing in disguise to leave at that time, with the politics and everything that was going on and what's happened since. But it was, a devastation then. And I've, like I said, had to relearn the basics.
Hmm.
I couldn't hardly talk and everything when it first happened. And of course, mom, bless her heart, I put her through so much. And so many prayer warriors. She asked her prayer warriors so much, and they've helped a lot through the years. And I'm doing so much better. I can drive, and I'm driving, to Kingsport for my uh, appointments with the weight loss doctor and things. And that would I couldn't have done that even a few months ago. So people don't realize what each person goes through. You
Right,
know.
right. On my call this morning, we were talking about, and I'm on this win the morning call. A good friend of mine had invited me to, and I've been inviting people. So I'll get you the link to that as well. We do it at 8 a.m. every
Okay.
morning on an application called Clubhouse, and we just all call in, excuse me,
Oh,
and we just share our wins and share what's going on and keep each other motivated and encouraged. And we were talking about the small wins, and we were talking about like progressions, and we were talking about progress, and all these different attributes that we equate to being successful and winning the morning. And so even though it was a horrible experience, you've since recovered, and
mm,
you're moving forward, and God is taking you to a new place. And you think about, again, not to minimize your experience, but you think about moving away from the police department allows you to be in this position now to be doing God's work and to be fulfilling your calling and doing something you're more interested in, and not just being in a job.
right.
Because so many of us, we have this, what I would say, I would call it antiquated, because it is, and it's very endemic of Western culture. This whole ideology of you just have to go to work, and you
Oh,
just got to go
yeah.
to work and pay your bills, and it doesn't matter if you
Hmm.
hate your job. If your job pays well, you got to go to work. And I just find that to be a false sense of identity, as well as a false narrative for the quality of life that God wants us to live. And you talk about when you do what you love, it doesn't feel like work. You never work a day in your life, right? And the money comes, because you're doing what you love. So I think more of us need to have the courage to step out. And I think what you see in a situation like myself, yourself, where I was forced out of the corporate world, because God knew I wasn't going to leave the money, just to be 100% honest.
Mm,
And, in your situation, you were stressed out. You couldn't do what God had called you to do. So in both of our cases, we had to go through terrible events
mm,
for God to get our attention. And
yeah.
so, to anybody who's listening now, anybody who's going to be listening later, I encourage you that if you feel a conviction to move a certain way, to go ahead and do that, because we can both tell you from experience, if God has to make you do it, it's very seldomly going to be pleasant.
That's true. I
And
never thought about it.
that's just the nature of how he works. Is, when we are so fixated on something and he's got to break us from that, it literally is a breaking. And it's not only a breaking away, but a breaking down, so you can be rebuilt in the way that he has called you to be. And guys, we talk about change being a place of discomfort. The level of discomfort you're willing to endure is based on your stubbornness, and how long you're going to reject the direction that you're trying to, or the direction that God has you going in. Because the harder you push back, the harder it's going to hurt when you finally have to stop and bend to his will.
True. Boy, it did me. I thought it was my family. I just loved that job and loved, especially the first 19 years when I was the secretary in the detective division. I just loved helping all of them and stuff. And then I was secretary to the chief. That was a little bit different, got more stressful, but I still really enjoyed it. And then it got to where my health was going down and I wasn't listening. And I was praying every morning, God, let me be able to get out of this bed. And then God let me be able to, and really, this was what I was doing. Let me be able to get in the shower. Give me the strength to get in the shower, get dressed, and get ready and go to work. And, my doctor, my nurse practitioner kept telling me, Rona, your stress level, you've got to go see a therapist. And I ignored that. And we talked
Mhm.
about it before. But, buddy, when you're right. When it's time and for you to get out of that situation, he's going to take you out. And
Mhm.
it was devastating. We've talked about I didn't want to live there for a while, but thank God for Mother and the Lord. And I'd
And
never take my own life because I don't want to go to hell. But I wouldn't do that to my family. It's selfish to do that. I saw to me do it in my job.
and it's a situation. I think people have, everybody has their own opinions about that particular topic. But as someone who has considered it on multiple occasions at some point, you're not, what people don't realize, and I think that I'm sure you've already know this, is that when people get to that point, they genuinely feel like this is the only option.
Hmm.
And I think that's the part that we downplay a lot on the outside,
Yeah.
is, oh, that's this and that's that, and how could you don't know what has put a person, when you talk about taking your life, I think people don't really understand the kind of extremes that it takes for a person to get to that point where they're truly willing to remove themselves from the earth. And I think that we don't give enough acknowledgement to the kind of pressures and traumas and things that lead to that kind of decision making.
Yeah.
On the outside, we can all have speculative opinions, but
Yeah.
let's, and this goes all the way back to bringing our conversation full circle about like your friends, and we all need to be mindful. And this was part of what we were talking about in the call earlier, about smiling and having respect for people, because you don't know what someone's going through. You don't
Exactly.
know what's happening behind closed doors. You don't know what's happening at home. You don't know what's happening at work outside of what you see. And so it does behoove us to always be, to the best of our ability, especially us as believers and
Yeah.
practitioners, we need to be as positive and careful and caring as we can be daily, because you don't know what's happening with someone. You don't know what's
That's
happening
true.
psychologically. Um,
Yeah.
and these people come in and they put a smile. It's like people who, and not to go too morose, but we talk about some of these mass shootings, and these people had, in many cases, had records of instability and different things going on in their lives, and I don't know, and we'll never know, but you don't know how they were being treated at work. You don't know how
Mm-mm.
they were being treated at home. You don't know what drove a person to that point. And,
Right.
and sometimes it is bullying. Sometimes it's belittling.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, I'm hoping to be able to go give a workshop and a seminar on effective communication. And I think the first thing that we need to understand about effective communication, even outside of the technical aspect of knowing your audience and things, is that everyone is a human being. And because of that, period, point blank, above anything else, you are a human. And I should have respect for you as a human being and a fellow inhabitant of this earth. And we don't do enough of that.
I agree. I hid it a lot. I worked, I was married 12 and a half years. I think I told you, and I was abused and bullied. And I come to work, and I worked at the police department during 8 years of that marriage. And I just put on a false front. And, but I would see every crime report that come through there. And I would not equate that to my situation.
Mhm.
And the abuse reports of the women, I'd look at and I'd say, Lord, honey, why don't you leave that person? And then it finally hit me, like, I think, like we talked about before, look what you're in, and it's just hard. I know why people, the women or
It
men,
is.
either one.
And
It,
force for the trees. It's all
yeah.
you always say that it's force for the trees. Whether you are in an abusive relationship, or you're in a job you don't like, or anything you want to equate to that analogy, it's the fact that when you are in a situation, it's very hard to see everything else around it.
Yeah.
And that's why God removes people and removes you. This is why we talk about the elevation. I always talk about the story of Zacchaeus. It's one of my favorite, simply because it's a very clear illustration of the need for separation, and the need to remove yourself either from a situation or from a person, or a combination of those. And you look at Zacchaeus, and not only was he not liked, right? Not only was he despised because of his position, he was also a short person in stature. And he still, with all of his faults, still had the cognition to remove himself, to climb the tree so he could see Jesus. And the moment he removed himself from the crowd, Jesus called him by name. And I think people don't have a realization of how powerful it is, of all the millions of people, all the people that Jesus has had ministered to, and even in that moment was there. He called Zacchaeus by name once he removed himself. And that goes back to showing that when you are in alignment, and when you are either forced to be removed or remove yourself, you clearly can hear what God has for you.
That's true.
And it's not always going to be bad things. Sometimes removing yourself is because you've got, even with a ton of good people around you, you've got too much input. It's overload, and you can't hear what God is doing, even though your friends are encouraging and they're uplifting and they're there for you, sometimes you still have to
Mm,
separate yourself momentarily in order to move the way God has you to move. Because we are human beings, we're social creatures, and we have a tendency to fall in line with whatever is trending or whatever if all your friends are saying, hey man, I think you'd be a good da 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 da, you should go do that. Eventually you're gonna be like, you know what, you guys are right, even though it may be counter to what God has you doing, and your
that's
friends are
right.
trying to be supportive. They're not God, and
Hmm.
have they may not know that that's not the direction for you.
That's true. That's true. And I'm meditating more, and talking to God more. I've always talked to God, of course, from day one of this mental breakdown. I did, but I always talked to Him through the years of my life. But I've been doing that a lot more. I've drawn closer to God, and this, like I said, I look back and it was a blessing in disguise.
Mhm.
Both of them, getting away from my ex and the job. So I'm disabled in some ways, but I'm
And that's what matters.
enabled
You know,
spiritually.
I think that I know that God puts us in particular situations in order to have Him exalted. I think that's something else that we have to talk more about. Is, I get that all the time. How come this happened? How come God let this happen? How come, these tragedies are occurring? And I think that people have the wrong perception. And what I mean is, you are the prize in this war for good and evil. Okay. You've got the enemy fighting for your soul. You've got God fighting for your soul. So a lot of times what's happening is you've got the enemy doing what the enemy does. My pastor was talking about that last night at Bible study. I mean, he prowls like a roaring lion seeking whom he can devour. What does that mean? I mean, what do you think about when you devour something, right? It's torn up into pieces and digested, and all the things that go along with that process. So why wouldn't you think that these terrible things will happen? Because the enemy's trying to keep us away from God. Also, the other side of that coin is that some things happen because God wants to get the glory and not man. And if we don't, sometimes our situations become dire to the point where God is the only option, to
Hmm.
prove that God is the only option, and not that, oh, I pulled myself up by my bootstraps. Look at
Mm.
me. Look what I did. Look how I recovered. Has nothing to do with you.
No, it sure doesn't. No, it was God, and He helped Mama. Mama helped me, and Lord, she was 80 when I had my collapse, so He helped her to be able to cope with this. Because Lord, I don't even remember what all I put her through, and because I was questioning God to start
Mhm.
with why this happened. It was so devastating, and my abilities were just wiped. Like I've talked before, I've just now learned how to earlier this year, how to use our stove again. I had such a fear because I all that was wiped from me, even simplest things from being able to talk on the phone. I'd stutter, and even talking to you, I wouldn't be able to do this. This is a miracle for me to be on a podcast, to start these like I did back in March, and now to be able to talk to people and to talk to you, which is such a
Amazing.
blessing. And I can see now that it's drawn me closer to God, and I'm very thankful it happened. I
Well,
hate what
I
I
mean,
put Mom through, but
well, and I think that she was prepared for that, as a believer.
oh yeah,
It
she's
was
very strong.
it was for that time, and sometimes it is that. We always think in terms of our chronology, right, and this linear progression of years, days, and all those things. And we have to remember that God doesn't operate the way that we operate. He's not bound by time the way we are. So you think about,
Yeah,
like your mother being 80 when that happened. Well, I mean, that's a blink of an eye of a millisecond. And but
yeah,
it might have been her entire life might have been gearing her up to be there for you in this moment or in that moment. And so you have to thank God for that. And
oh yeah,
it's always amazing to see just how he operates so many things simultaneously. in your life, and how all these things are being positioned and moved. And it's, hindsight's 2020. So I know you've had them, I've had them, where you look back and you're like, oh, that's why that happened, or oh, now because forest for the
Hmm.
trees, we can't see it. And I think that a lot of our issue that we take with God is, and I know I do this still to this day, and I'm working on it, but it's hard, is we have to stop asking why
Yeah,
and start asking, what are you trying to show me?
that's a good point.
Because why is a question that seldom gets answered in any time that you use it in scripture, in secular, in the practical world, spiritual world. Why is a question that seldom gets answered. So we need to stop asking God why and start asking him, what is it that I need to learn? What are you trying to show me? What is it that I need to get from whatever's happening? And I think not only that would help give us more peace, but it would also help us be looking in the right direction. I mean, looking for the silver lining, be looking for what it is that we're trying to learn, or what he's trying to show us for us to move forward into the next level.
I agree. Mama told me that we shouldn't ask why, shouldn't ask the Lord why way back then. She knew, she's very wise, bless her heart. And I love her so much for her support and everything she did. And I'm at peace now. I do have times, of course, like everybody else, when I'm not, but most of the time I have peace of mind now. And I didn't with the PTSD, it never leaves you.
Right. Right.
And, that's one of the byproducts of the abuse and all the stuff I've gone through. But anyway, Lord, a lot of people's gone through a lot worse than me, honey. And
That's it. That's it.
yeah,
And another thing that I say, that I believe wholeheartedly, that I try to always keep in the forefront of my mind anytime disaster strikes. And even if it's just catastrophe as I define it for my personal life at that moment, is that still to this day, no one has been tried like Job.
no,
And to see him go through what he went through
yes, Lord, have
and
mercy.
still not blaspheme against God.
Yes.
And then you see that he received double and then almost triple for what he had went through. Uh,
Hmm.
it's something that it's hard to fathom, because we see things and everything's a crisis, right? I mean, that's the world we live in now. Everything's a crisis.
Yeah,
But you have to bear in mind that if he can go through all of that, surely I can go through this.
right.
Um, and this is speaking again from someone who was on the brink of self destruction, who went to the abyss and came back, through God's grace, because He had a greater plan. So it's not somebody who's never dealt with the loss and depression. And there was a time where I had to go to like 8 funerals in 2 months. I mean, just
Oh,
all kinds of
Lord, have
wild stuff.
mercy.
It was yeah, a lot was happening, and again, nothing to the extent of Job, but it kept knowing that was also a way to help me cope and work through some of what I was dealing with, because it wasn't the why question. It was like, okay, what do you want me to learn? I see what Job did and I see what he got for it. And
Hmm.
so I'm believing, right? We go back to the whole thing about believing, that you're going to reward me for remaining with you even in the valley.
That's true. That's true. I mean, I can see it. I feel like I've got a clearer communication with God now because I had too much going on in my mind. And now my mind is quietened and I have peace of mind so much of the time now. And I meditate, make it a point to meditate,
Hmm.
ask the Lord to fill me with His golden light and let it just permeate my soul and cleanse my body and soul. And that really has helped me. I've started doing that, and I want to draw closer to Him and
That's it.
do what
And
He wants me
we
to do.
we talk about, like, going back to the whole believe thing. He literally, like you just said, had to quiet your mind and separate your mind from the distractions of your job and your marriage and the things that were taking you away from your ability to communicate with him. So I think that's just a beautiful thing. And again, turning tragedy into triumph
Mm-hmm.
is being able to look back and realize that you weren't in a good situation. You were just existing in a
Yeah.
situation, and to move to a point of living, and then living for Christ, even though you had to go through hell to do it, is
That's true, honey.
still a beautiful.
Amen.
It's still a beautiful
Amen.
thing. So it's, man, it's I got a lot to think about now.
Oh,
Just to go
bless
forward.
your
I mean,
heart.
it's always just, these conversations are always enriching, and I have them often,
Yes.
and I'm so excited to be able to be on your show again, as well as to be gearing up to have more guests on my show, guys. So just thank you, thank you, thank you. This has been a great time in fellowship. I'll just briefly close out just saying, guys, don't forget that you can find all my books on Amazon. Type in my name, Langley Shazor. The devotional 60 Days of Casual Word is definitely the one that I would suggest you guys start with. The rest of them are poetry, equally enjoyable. But if you're looking for something that will help speak to your life and speak to your situation, definitely check out 60 Days of Casual Word. Also, check out the podcast, the Casual Word Radio, anywhere that you, any platform that you use to get your podcast. We're on Google, Spotify, Apple, whatever else there is out there. I don't know, but you can find us Casual Word Radio. You can also find me on YouTube at the Casual Word. That's just, you have some of the older guests that I've had on, and again, we also film the interviews that we're doing now on the radio for the podcast. And of course, as everybody's seeing, we'll be doing more Zoom until I get a studio set up to do some local interviews. But we're definitely utilizing this Zoom and the platform technology that we have to continue to bring you guys quality content as well. You guys check me out on Instagram at The Casual Word, Langley Casual Word Chaser on Facebook. You can email me at thecasualword@gmail.com. I am very good at responding. So if you have any inquiries, if you have any prayer requests, if you want to be on as a guest with me, please don't hesitate to reach out. Again, that's thecasualword@gmail.com.
That's great, honey. I hope we can do this again next week if it fits into your schedule.
Absolutely.
Well,
We'll always plan and see what we can't work out.
yeah. Well, I've really enjoyed it, honey. It really helped me, and I hope you have a good week. And
Thank you.
thank you. Thank you
All
so
right.
much for being on here.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure.
All right, darling. I love you.
All right. I love you.
All right, honey. Bye bye.
Bye.